Someone was rude to you today. Maybe they cut you off in a conversation. Maybe they said something that made you feel small. Maybe they were dismissive or cold, or they treated you like you didn't matter. And the worst part, you didn't know what to say. You froze, or you said something you regretted, or you just stayed quiet and walked away feeling like you lost. If that sounds familiar, stay with me, because this video is going to change how you handle people like that forever. We've all been there. You're at work. You're in a meeting, and someone talks over you. Again, like what you said didn't even register, like you weren't even in the room, and everyone around you just moves on like it's normal, or maybe it's closer to home. Someone in your family makes a comment at dinner, one of those little remarks that sounds almost like a joke, but you know it wasn't, and you sit there, smiling awkwardly, not sure whether to laugh it off or say something. Or maybe it's a friend, someone who always has a way of making you feel just a little bit less than. A subtle put down here, a dismissive look there, nothing big enough to call out directly, but enough to leave you feeling drained every time you leave them. You replay it later. Why didn't I say something? Or worse, why did I say that? Here's what nobody tells you, though. The people who handle rude behavior the best, the ones who walk out of those moments feeling calm, dignified, even powerful, they don't win by saying the most. They win by how they carry themselves, by what they choose to respond to, by what they choose to let go. And that is a skill, a real skill, and you can learn it. This video is about that skill. It's not about being passive. It's not about letting people walk all over you. And it's definitely not about coming up with the perfect comeback 3 hours later while you're in the shower. It's about something deeper, something the Stoics understood thousands of years ago, and something that the most composed, respected people in your life have quietly figured out. It's the idea that your response, or your non-response, is always a choice. And when you start making that choice on purpose, instead of reacting out of panic or ego or hurt feelings, something shifts. You stop being a target, not because you become cold or distant, but because you become genuinely difficult to rattle. So let's talk about 7 ways to do exactly that. To silence rude behavior, all without saying too much. Silence, not awkward silence, not frozen in shock silence, intentional, deliberate, fully aware silence. When someone says something rude, our instinct is to fill the gap. We stumble over words, we over-explain, we apologize even when we don't mean it, or we snap back and say something we'll regret for the next 3 days. But here's what actually works. You just look at them calmly, steadily, and you don't say anything for a second or two longer than feels comfortable. That's it. Try to imagine this. You're at work, and a colleague says something dismissive in front of the whole team. Something like, "Oh, that idea won't work. We tried that before." And they say it with that tone. You know the one. Slightly condescending, like they're doing you a favor by correcting you. Now, if you argue back immediately, you look defensive. If you fold and apologize, you look weak. But if you just hold their gaze for a moment, just a beat longer than they expected, and then you say nothing, or you simply move on with what you were saying, that's power. The silence puts the weight back on them. It says, without words, "I heard you, and I don't need to react to that." It makes them wonder if maybe they went too far. It communicates self-respect without broadcasting your feelings. Marcus Aurelius wrote something that stayed with me. He said that how we respond to what happens to us is always our choice. The situation is outside of us. Our reaction lives inside us, and we get to decide what lives there. The pause, that brief, intentional pause, is you exercising that choice in real time. Practice it this week. When someone says something that stings, before you respond, breathe, count to 3, then decide whether to speak at all. Here's the truth most people miss. When someone is rude to you, they're usually not actually thinking about you. They're thinking about themselves, their stress, their insecurity, their bad day, their need for control. You just happen to be the nearest person. I remember reading about a study where they asked people who'd been rude to describe what they were feeling right before the interaction. Almost all of them described being overwhelmed, threatened, or stressed. Not evil, not malicious, just struggling. Now, that doesn't mean you excuse the behavior. You're not their therapist, and you're not obligated to absorb what they're putting out. But when you understand why people are rude, really, deeply understand it, you stop taking it personally. And the moment you stop taking it personally, they lose their power over you. There's this old Stoic idea that other people's actions are outside of our control. What's inside our control is only how we interpret them. The rude comment happens. You can make it mean, I'm not good enough. Or you can make it mean, that person is having a hard time and chose the wrong outlet. One of those interpretations drains your energy for the rest of the day. The other one lets you move on in about 10 minutes. A friend of mine used to get so upset when her boss was short with her in the mornings. She'd spend the whole workday convinced she'd done something wrong. She'd replay every conversation, every email, looking for what she messed up. Then one day she found out her boss had a sick parent and was dealing with serious family stuff at home. And she said something to me I've never forgotten. She said, I spent 6 months making his pain about me. Don't spend 6 months making someone else's pain about you. There's a difference between escalating and addressing. When someone crosses a real line, when it's not just a bad day but a pattern, or when it's genuinely disrespectful, you can say something. You can address it directly. You just don't have to do it with heat. The most powerful thing you can say to a rude person is something calm, clear, and matter-of-fact. Not an explosion, not a speech, just a simple, steady sentence. Something like, hey, I'd appreciate it if we talked to each other differently. Or even simpler, that felt a little off. Let's start over. What makes this work isn't the words, it's the tone. Because when you say something like that without anger, without shaking, without a raised voice, it does something unexpected. It makes the other person realize that you're in control of the situation, not them. Think about the people in your life who command the most respect, the ones who, when something goes wrong, everyone looks to. They don't yell, they don't panic. They assess and they speak calmly and clearly. And because of that, people listen. You can be that person, not by suppressing your feelings, but by choosing the right moment and the right register. Because here's the truth nobody wants to say out loud. A quiet, confident response to rudeness is almost always more devastating than a loud, angry one. It shows that person, you didn't shake me. I'm still here. I'm still fine. This is where the fourth way comes in. And it's one of the hardest ones to actually do. You don't chase the argument. When someone gets rude and you respond calmly, they sometimes escalate. They push harder. They try to drag you into the fight. And your nervous system wants to follow because conflict triggers something primal in us. It says, defend yourself now. But the best thing you can do, the thing that almost nobody does, is simply not follow them down that road. You can say something like, I don't think this conversation is going anywhere productive right now. Let's pick it up later. And then you actually leave, or you change the subject, or you go quiet again, because here's what they're looking for. They want a reaction. They want to see that they got to you. And when you don't give them that, when you stay centered while they're unraveling, the dynamic shifts completely. You didn't fight, and somehow you won. I think about this like a rope. When someone's rude, they're handing you a rope and daring you to grab it and pull. The moment you grab it, you're in a tug of war. But if you just let the rope fall to the ground and walk away, they're standing there alone, holding nothing. We focus so much on what to say that we forget how much of our communication is nonverbal. Your posture, your eye contact, whether you flinch when someone raises their voice. When someone is rude, the automatic response is to physically shrink. Shoulders in, eyes down. Voice gets quieter. It's a protection response, and it makes sense, but it signals vulnerability. And some people, whether they realize it or not, pick up on that and keep pushing. So here's what you do instead. When you feel that impulse to shrink, you do the opposite. Very subtly, very calmly. You sit up a little. You breathe a little slower. You hold your eye contact steady, not in a staring contest way, just in a I'm comfortable here way. You don't puff up. You don't perform confidence. You just settle into yourself. There's a concept in Stoicism called the inner citadel. The idea is that no matter what's happening around you, there's a place inside you that's steady, that's still, that can't be touched. And when you access that place, even just a little bit, it shows in your body. Think about a time you saw someone handle a tense situation with real grace. They probably weren't doing anything dramatic. They were just still, grounded, unhurried. And that stillness communicated something the other person couldn't argue with. You can practice this literally. Stand in front of a mirror sometimes and just watch your default posture. Notice where you hold tension. Notice what happens to your face when you're stressed, and then consciously soften it. Lower your shoulders, unclench your jaw. Breathe. That practice off the field is what makes it possible on the field. Not fake, not people-pleasing, genuinely warm. When someone is rude, the last thing we want to do is be kind to them. Our instinct says, match their energy. Give them what they gave you. But what if you did something completely different? What if you were just decent? Not because they deserve it, but because you choose to be a decent person regardless of what someone else is doing. There's a story I love about Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers. Someone once came at him with insults, and instead of getting drawn in, he just smiled and said something like, "That might be true about me, but it's interesting that you felt the need to say it." No defensiveness, no counterattack, just this quiet, almost bemused clarity. What that does, what responding with warmth or mild curiosity does, is it completely disarms the rudeness. It takes away the fuel. Because rudeness is designed to get a rise out of you. It's fishing for a reaction. And when you don't bite, when you're calm and even a little warm, it just falls flat. I'm not saying you do this with everyone. Some people are genuinely unkind and need a clear boundary. But for the everyday stuff, the colleague who's snippy, the stranger who's impatient, the acquaintance who's dismissive, sometimes the best thing is to just be human. Ask if they're okay. Make a small joke. Give them a moment to course correct. A lot of people, when given that opening, will take it. Because most rude behavior isn't coming from a bad person. It's coming from a struggling person who forgot, just for a second, to treat you like one too. And the seventh way, the one that ties all of this together, is the most important one. You have to actually believe you deserve respect. Not in an arrogant way, not in a "I'm better than you" way, just a quiet, settled knowing that you are a person who deserves to be treated with basic dignity. Because here's what happens when you don't believe that. Every rude comment confirms your worst fears about yourself. Every dismissive look is proof that you're not enough. And so you either fold completely or you overreact, because you're not defending your dignity. You're defending your sense of worth. And that's a much messier fight. But when you really deeply believe you deserve respect, when that's not something you're trying to prove, just something you know, everything else gets easier. The silence comes naturally. The calm response comes naturally. The ability to let small things go comes naturally. Because you don't need anything from the rude person. You don't need them to apologize. You don't need them to see how wrong they were. You don't need to win. You're already good. This is the deepest work, and honestly, it's the longest journey. It's built slowly through small moments where you choose yourself, where you don't apologize for taking up space, where you walk away from things that are beneath you without guilt, where you stop explaining your worth to people who aren't listening. Mike, let me stop here for a second because I want to ask you something. Think about the last time someone treated you badly, and think about how you felt afterward, not right in the moment, but later. When you were alone, when you were replaying it, did you feel angry, embarrassed, small? Now imagine handling that same moment the way we've been talking about. The steady eye contact, the calm response, the complete refusal to be shaken. How does that version of you feel afterward? That's not just a hypothetical. That's a version of you that's absolutely possible. Not because you suppress everything, but because you've done the work. You've practiced. You've decided quietly who you want to be when things get hard. That's what the Stoics called virtue. Not being perfect, not being a robot. Just having a clear sense of who you are and refusing to lose that person no matter what someone else throws at you. Let's keep going. I want to tell you about someone, a woman I know. We'll call her Sarah. She worked in a corporate office for years, and she had a manager who was just relentlessly critical. Not in a constructive way, in a demeaning way. The kind of manager who would correct you in front of others and then smile like they'd done you a favor. For a long time, Sarah tried everything. She tried arguing back. She tried shrinking down and staying quiet. She tried being extra good at her job, thinking maybe if she was perfect, he'd ease up. Nothing worked. Then one day, and she says she doesn't even know where it came from, she just decided something. Now, she decided she wasn't going to let him determine how she felt about herself anymore. Not because she excused his behavior, but because she was tired of handing him that power. So the next time he criticized her in a meeting, she just looked at him, nodded slowly, and said, "I'll take that into consideration." No defensiveness, no visible hurt. Just a calm, clean acknowledgement. He didn't know what to do with that. She said the room shifted. People looked at her differently, and more importantly, she felt different, not defeated. Not like she'd swallowed something, like she'd held on to something. She told me, I didn't win that meeting by being louder or smarter. I won it by being unmovable. That's what we're talking about here. There's another story that comes to mind, a guy who told me about a falling out with a close friend. The friend said something genuinely cruel during an argument, something that dug right into one of his deepest insecurities. And he said his first instinct was to fire back. He had the words ready. He knew exactly what to say to cut back just as hard, but something stopped him. He said he just looked at his friend and quietly said, I'm not going to respond to that. That's not the kind of conversation I want to have. And he left. His friend called him 3 days later and apologized, genuinely apologized, and told him that the way he'd responded, the refusal to engage, the calm exit, had made him stop and actually think about what he'd said. If he'd fired back, they would have both doubled down. The wound would have gone deeper. But the restraint, the quiet, dignified exit, created space for something real to happen. That's the thing about responding from a calm place. It doesn't just protect you. Sometimes it's the thing that actually allows the relationship to heal. Here's what I want you to walk away with today. You don't have to be the loudest person in the room to command respect. You don't have to win every argument. You don't have to have the perfect thing to say. You just have to know who you are. And refuse to forget that, even when someone's doing their best to make you. The 7 things we talked about. The intentional pause, choosing not to take things personally, addressing directly without heat, refusing to chase the argument, using your body language, responding with warmth when it serves you, and deeply believing you deserve respect. None of these are magic. They're all just different expressions of the same thing. A settled sense of self that can't be borrowed or taken away. People who behave rudely are almost always people who've lost touch with that. They've forgotten, or maybe they never knew, what it feels like to be genuinely secure. And so they push and test and provoke, looking for proof of something they can't name. And when you don't take the bait, when you just stand there calm and whole and unmoved, they don't know what to do with that. Because you've given them something they weren't prepared for. You gave them the truth that you know who you are. And that's not arrogance. That's not aggression. That's something quieter and much, much harder to rattle. That's dignity. It's yours. It's always been yours. Nobody gets to take it. They can only make you forget it. And now, you won't. So the next time someone is rude to you, and they will be, because that's just how life goes sometimes, remember this moment. Remember that you have a choice in how you respond, that the pause is available to you, that calm is not weakness, that you don't have to chase anything or prove anything. You just have to be the person you've decided to be. And that person, they're going to be just fine. If something in this video landed for you, if it helped even a little bit, consider subscribing. We put out videos like this regularly on mindset, on stoicism, on how to move through the world with a little more peace and a little less noise. And if you know someone who could use this today, share it with them. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next one.